On this video, I want to go through how do you get the most nutrients out of your food? Like, think about that for a moment. There are two reasons we eat, right? One is for taste and one is for nutrition, to get nutrients out of there. Those are sort of the big behind the scenes reasons why we eat. But what really has always grabbed me and I find really interesting is the fact that we eat, let's say, a cup of broccoli because we know broccoli is good for us. But how do you know there's actually enough nutrients in that broccoli? On this video, I want to go through how you actually make smart choices in picking the right foods with the most nutrients. Actually, this nutrient depletion we are starting to see some really bad health effects from the fact that our food doesn't have as many nutrients in it. So let's talk about the 4 things you can do, because that'll make your life a lot easier. Here we go. Over the last 75 years, there's been a 25 to 50% drop in the nutrient density of our fruits and vegetables. So let's go back to what your grandma told you. Your grandma said eat your vegetables because why? So you could be healthy? But if you're eating vegetables from the wrong farm, that's literally what it is now, you're not necessarily getting the nutrients you need. So I want to walk you through the process of how do you pick the right food. So here we go. 1, you want to avoid GMO crops, okay? Genetically modified crops. Now, let's think this through as well, because, I think there's been a lot of debate over GMO foods and non-GMO foods. And you have to remember that genetically modified foods were meant to be more bacteria resistant, meaning that the farmer could actually yield more crop and make more money. So genetically modified was a term and a style of farming that allowed the farmer to win. But in order for when the farmer is winning, let's just put it this way, when the farmer is winning and getting more profit and yielding more food, that often means less nutrient density. And what we know is that there is a huge reason that you should be avoiding GMO foods. And let me explain why. So the biggest problem is you have a genetically modified food that is what they call Roundup Ready crop, where they are specifically, these foods are modified to survive glyphosate. Okay, walk this through with me. Don't click off. I want you to understand this. This is life-saving what I'm teaching you here right now. I'm not joking. So GMO foods are meant to survive one of the harshest pesticides on the planet, and it's called glyphosate. And glyphosate, I've done tons of videos on it, is actually driving toxins deeper into our tissues. Glyphosate destroys our microbiome. Glyphosate has been linked to all kinds of hormonal problems. Glyphosate has been linked to learning disabilities. Like, this is a nasty pesticide. And the brilliant agricultural big ag basically came up with a genetically modified seed that they could yield a lot of product with, and they could spray the shit out of it with glyphosate so that this seed had to be able to handle this really toxic pesticide. So glyphosate and genetically modified foods go hand in hand. And the challenge with that is glyphosate destroys the nutrients and the microbes that are in soil. So think about your food growing in soil. Whatever is in the soil, whatever positive bacteria, whatever nutrients are in the soil, as the plant grows, it's grabbing the nutrients from the soil in order to grow strong and big, and that becomes a nutrient-dense food. But if the soil's already depleted, then there's no nutrients for it to grow from. So even though it may look beautiful, it literally doesn't have the same amount of nutrients because of the glyphosate. And then there's something else called monocropping, where they're going in and they're just tilling over and over these fields that our food is grown in, and it keeps weakening and weakening and weakening the soil. It really comes back to the soils are depleted because of this way of farming. So whenever you see genetically modified, I want you to think glyphosate, I want you to think toxicity, and I want you to think this food, if it's not, doesn't say non-GMO, this food is nutrient deficient. This is why I want you to start looking for the label on your food that says non-GMO. Non-GMO means that that food isn't being grown in this torturous, toxic way. Does that make sense? And science is all over the place. Like, a 2019 study said that these chemicals cause this soil depletion. There was a 2019 review that found that glyphosate interferes with soil bacteria and binds to the nutrients that are in there. So not only is there not as many nutrients, but there's actually this glyphosate is binding to the nutrients, making it even worse. And this review that I just commented on, they found that glyphosate persists for years after spraying. So you are continuing to see the degradation of those soils. And this one's fascinating. There was a 2020 study that showed that Bayer, Monsanto, the company that orchestrates glyphosate and genetically modified foods, has paid more than $10 billion in cancer lawsuits to 40,000 people, all of who developed non-Hodgkin lymphomas cancer after being exposed to glyphosate. So this is when we invented GMO foods and glyphosate, we weren't thinking about the human, we were thinking about the farmer's profit. So if you want food that's nutrient dense, make sure that it's non-GMO. Okay, second thing is you want to buy organic whenever possible, because now you're not getting glyphosate, plus you're not getting other endocrine disruptors. I can tell you here in America, depending on when you're watching this, our president just accepted and allowed forever chemicals to be a pesticide that gets sprayed on our food. Another win for big ag. So what that means now is not only do we have glyphosate on there, but we have forever chemicals. And forever chemicals have been linked to all kinds of hormonal problems. Probably one of the biggest is infertility. So I think when I was first in practice over 30 years ago, I used to say to my patients, hey, you should buy organic. And some of them would say back to me, well, it's a little more expensive than I would like to. And so I would be like, okay, I totally get that. I'm going to say what the most expensive thing to do, especially here in America, is get sick. If you get sick, your hospital bills, your healthcare bills are going to be really large. So how about we keep you healthy by making smart choices, like staying away from crops that have been sprayed with pesticides. And a 2010 study found that the organic produce, the one that's not sprayed, is more nutrient dense. And here's the fascinating reason for this, and the study goes into this. We'll put all the links at the bottom. The fascinating reason, it's just like fasting. Think this through with me. Is that when you spray pesticides on, let's say, broccoli, that broccoli doesn't have to become nutrient rich in order to fight off harsh weather conditions, bacteria that are trying to eat at it, hot sun coming down on it. So we manipulate it by spraying these pesticides onto the food. And so the food doesn't have to be strong, which means it doesn't have to build a resilience packed with antioxidants. If you do not spray that food, that particular broccoli, lettuce, whatever is being grown from the ground has to make its own nutrients. It has to find some nutrients to pull into the food to protect it from insects and to be able to handle harsh winters and to be able to handle harsh sun. So it has to come with an internal resource. And so it is more nutrient dense because it is forced to become more nutrient dense. Did you catch that? So even though we go, well, I might, and I'm going to talk about the cost of organic in a moment, we know that organic produce has higher levels of vitamin C, has higher levels of magnesium, iron, and phosphorus because it is forced to be able to create that. But if I spray it with a pesticide, now the pesticide is doing all the work and the internal crop doesn't have to do that kind of work. Make sense? Kind of like fasting. When you go into a fasted state, your body has to repair itself. But when you eat, those repair mechanisms don't turn on. When you spray a crop, that crop doesn't have to become nutrient dense, but when you don't spray it, now that crop is forced to make its own nutrients inside to protect itself. But when you eat that, you now get those nutrients. Does that make sense? It's like, I really want you all to get this. So just keep in mind, without the protection of pesticides, organic crops have to deal with a lot more threats, and they end up more antioxidant rich. So, okay, what if you're like, well, shoot, I don't know if I can afford, like, let's use an avocado as an example. If I'm sitting in the market and I look at an organic avocado compared to a non-organic avocado, it's about a $4 difference per avocado. That's a lot. So I can tell you, for me, I looked at that and I was like, well, there's a skin on the outside. That's a good thing. So it protected it in some way to have this skin. So the pesticides maybe that were being sprayed on the skin are not seeping into the fruit that I'm going to eat. So I'm not eating pesticides, but we still have the nutrient issue. But I mean, just FYI, we always buy non-organic avocados because of the $4 difference. It just seems a little obscene. But the good news is that there's an organization, a nonprofit out there called the Environmental Working Group. And they've come up with something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And the Dirty Dozen are the 12 things you really need to stay away from. And I'm going to read them to you right now. Spinach, strawberries, kale, collard mustard greens, they put that in one category. Grapes, peaches, cherries, nectarines, pears, apples, blackberries, blueberries, and potatoes. These are the ones you absolutely need to buy organic. These are the ones that are being sprayed the most, and these are the ones that are being affected by the depletion of nutrients due to the spraying. So if all you did is swap out your spinach, your strawberries, the ones I just named, and made sure those were organic, that's not necessarily going to be a huge expense to you. So make sure you buy those whenever possible. Okay, so the first one was non-GMO. We're not buying genetically modified food. Okay, we're also trying to buy organic. Now, the third step is you want to eat grass-fed meat, pasture-raised poultry, and wild-caught fish. Now, I grew up in a household with a total nutrition nut as a mom. And I got to tell you that I have been eating healthy since I was a kid. And we never, back in the 70s and the 80s, we never had to use terms like grass-fed or pasture-raised or wild-caught. And that's largely because just like our crops have been depleted of nutrients, our meat has been pumped with hormones and antibiotics. And if you're taking like a chicken, for example, that has been in a cage, it hasn't been out on the pasture moving around. So same thing as the plant that hasn't been forced to create its own nutrient. If the animal you are eating hasn't been forced to exercise it and move around or eat from a regenerative farm that has a lot of biodiversity, then it's anemic of nutrients and it's packed with antibiotics and chemicals like growth hormone, which is a massive endocrine disruptor, and it starts to affect your hormones. So this is the sad state. I'm like depressed even doing this video, but I want you to understand these buzzwords and how to eat so that you're getting what you need to be healthy. So start looking for things like grass-fed meat. For example, a 22 study found that grass-fed beef has more omega-3s and a better omega-3/6 ratio and higher micronutrient content than conventional beef. Because that cow's off on a pasture eating from grass as opposed to the cow in a conventional farm that is being caged in and feeding grain. Now, here on this channel, we've talked so much about what the positives and the negatives of grains are. But I don't think we realize that we're eating a grain-fed animal, that there's actually going to be a higher glycemic expense of that. It's actually going to spike your glucose like a piece of bread would. So we want to make sure that we're getting you into a grass-fed type beef. And it's more nutrient dense, plus you don't get that glucose spike. So, and the other thing that we know about animals that are grass-fed and pasture-raised is their environment is so much healthier. So they're out ranging around on big fields. So because they have so much open space, they actually don't have to use as many antibiotics because these animals don't get as sick as the conventional animals do. And the wild caught is also a very interesting one. When I go to a restaurant, I love salmon, and I will always ask, is it wild caught or is it farm raised? Same concept. If it's farm raised, it's raised in a pond where the fish are really tight and they haven't been able to swim in large, open, cold water. A wild salmon that comes from Alaska, where it's been in a cold water where it can swim and be free, is going to be able to build more nutrients, specifically omega-3. And when you look at why do you eat salmon, some of us love the taste of us, some of us don't, but don't we eat it for the omega-3s? Don't we eat it for the nutrition? Well, if you're doing it farm raised, you're not eating it for the nutrition. So when I go to a restaurant, I always ask, and if they say, oh, it's farm raised, I usually 9 out of 10 times won't order it because it's nutrient deficient. I'll only order it if I'm like really looking for the taste of salmon. So, and then the fourth thing, and I'm going to call this a bonus tip, is that when you go to shop, I really want you to start reading these labels, and I want you to look for some buzzwords. And there are 2 buzzwords that tell you, hey, they did something different with this food that made it more nutrient dense, and it's the buzzword of biodynamic, specifically in produce. Biodynamic produce means that they, just kind of like biodynamic wine, means that they used the moon. They planted according to the moon so that they didn't have to use as many herbicides and insecticides. So they don't have to spray it as much when they do biodynamic farming. The other bonus tip is anything that says regenerative farm. So I'll give you an example. Our daughter lives in Idaho, in Victor, Idaho. And we were in a store there and I found the most perfect bag of potato chips. And you know, Idaho, those of you outside the country don't know this maybe, but Idaho is known for its potatoes. So I look at this bag of potato chip and it literally has every buzzword on it. Biodynamic, organic, non-GMO, and then it said from a regenerative farm. Well, what that means is if I'm eating a potato chip from a potato that came from a regenerative farm and it wasn't sprayed, that this potato chip, how many of us love potato chips? This potato chip actually has more nutrients in it. And they even went on to make sure that they put the right oils in there. They did it with avocado oil. I literally hold this bag of chips up in this supermarket in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, this is a masterpiece of a potato chip. And I love potato chips. So these buzzwords allow you to eat guilt-free some of your favorite foods. So look for regenerative and look for biodynamic. Now, a 22 study found that these farming approaches lead to more nutrient-dense crops, specifically more vitamins, more minerals, and phytonutrients. So if you're looking to get your nutrition out of your food, you've got to follow these buzzwords. And I know you're going to ask me what the brand of the potato chip is, so we'll put a link in the bottom. It's a family-owned business too. It just, the whole thing was a big win. So when we look at using food as medicine, When you have conversations with loved ones where you say, well, I don't need to take supplements because I eat a good variety of food, I want you to ask yourself the question of, am I getting food from nutrient-dense places? Is it non-GMO? Is it organic? Is it coming from a regenerative farm? Are they using biodynamic principles? These 10, 20 years ago used to be laughable. I mean, we were like, really? You're going to pay that much more? But we have now hit a moment that you're either going to pay more for those, or you're going to make a decision to supplement and pay for supplements, which you can also pay for, or you're going to pay for disease. So you decide which way you want to pay. And for me, I would way rather buy food from the right farm so that I'm getting the right nutrients than spend that same money on supplements or pay that same money on doctor's bills. It's a sad truth of where we are today. So there are my tips for more nutrient-dense foods. And then I also just want to point out that you all have asked me over the years, like, should I take supplements or can I get everything in food? I hope you understand the answer to that question. Let's talk about 3 foods that I'm personally giving up, and I want to explain why I'm giving these foods up, and I'm going to encourage you to give them up. And many of them just have replacements, so it's not like you're going to be in deprivation, I promise you. It's just having the knowledge to know how to pick a better quality food. And I think when we're talking nutrition, whether it's weight loss or brain health or menopause, I really think one of the most important things is we get out of this quantifying food. How much should I be eating of something? And really dive deeper into a discussion of quality. What should I be looking for when it comes to quality of food? Because my experience has been, not only in my own personal life, but in my practice, was that if we switched people from counting stuff like calories and macros like protein and carbohydrates, and we switched them to quality, looking for quality of these different foods, specifically the 3 I'm going to show you right now, it's a game changer. You lose weight, you feel better, you sleep better, your brain functions more, and you do not feel deprived. So, have I got your attention? Let's look at these 3 foods. The first one is factory farmed eggs. Now, if you're not aware that there's a difference in eggs, I highly recommend you listen up here, because eggs are powerful. They have every single nutrient in it to make a baby chick. So it can help support collagen production. It can help with brain health. It's got a lot of choline. Of all the foods that can support a really healthy brain, eggs are one of them because of their choline content. But when we buy commercial eggs that are not from pasture-raised chickens, they're kind of nutrient deficient. And let me tell you the science on this, and then I'm actually going to show you the difference between an egg that is rich in nutrients and one that's not. But there was a 22 study in the Journal of Food that found pasture-raised eggs had 3 times more omega-3s and had double the nutrients compared to conventional eggs. Now, keep in mind that omega-3s are really important. A lot of you are buying fish oils to try to bring your omega-3s up, but you could get it in real food. But it needs to be pasture-raised eggs. And I don't know if you can tell here, but this is a pasture-raised egg right here. You can see that the whites have a little more orange to it. And most importantly, you can see that the yolk should be an orange yellow. It should not be a light yellow. This egg here, this was actually a pretty good conventional egg I found, is deficient in the nutrients, and you can tell because the yolk is just a little bit lighter in color. An egg yolk should not be a light yellow. It should tend to be more of an orange. And you can see it even when you're scrambling the eggs, but we want to look for pasture-raised, cage-free range eggs, because think about it, as those chickens are able to move they're actually making a healthier body for the chicken, and a healthier chicken is going to produce a healthier egg. There's a couple ways you can find this. You can look for organic eggs at your market, or do what we love to do, which is go to your farmer's market and start to talk to the farmers. They'll tell you all about their eggs. We've even gotten really into duck eggs because they have even more nutrients in them. Okay, number 2, I've been a huge fan of soy. I'm trying to bring soy back, especially for women, because it's an incredible phytoestrogen. But what I refuse to eat, and I every once in a while find myself falling into the trap of eating non-organic soy. So when I go to a restaurant, especially if it's like a sushi or Japanese restaurant, I always get edamame. But if it's not organic, I'll skip it, because non-organic soy is a toxic food. And this is where all the bad rap came around soy, is that we found that it was toxic when you sprayed it with pesticides, highly sprayed with pesticides. And many of you know I've done a video here for you all on glyphosate and how damaging glyphosate can be. And soy is one of the most heavily sprayed crops that is sprayed with glyphosate. The other thing that we know about soy is it's highly genetically modified, and genetically modified foods tend to be more deficient in nutrients, so they're not going to have that phytoestrogen that you're looking for, and they can be toxic. And let me tell you the research on this, because it's pretty powerful. A 22 study found that soy is the biggest GMO crop in the world. It makes up 48% of genetically modified foods. And the problem with GMO soybeans is they've been altered to tolerate huge amounts of glyphosate. I want you to catch that. Genetically modified foods were genetically modified to handle large amounts of glyphosate. Glyphosate is a known carcinogenic, so this is a deadly combo together. And a 2019 study in the Journal of Plants noted that glyphosate is persistent in our environment and it will pollute. And we know that it leads to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We know that it leads to thyroid problems. We know, I brought you tons of information. I recently did a video on how the glyphosate laws here in America have been drastically overturned, and everything is being sprayed with glyphosate right now. And that is leading to a whole host of health problems. And soy is one of the biggest crops. So, we always think of like soy milk as being a really healthy thing for us, when in reality, if it's not organic, it's not healthy. It's actually the opposite. So you can enjoy your edamame, you can enjoy your soy milk, as long as it's coming from a non-GMO organic farm. That's the key. Okay. Number 3 is farm-raised salmon. Now, salmon is incredible for omega-3s. I love salmon. But if you get it farm-raised, it typically doesn't have the same nutrient-dense omega-3s in it as wild does. So, and let me, again, show you the science on this. A 2020 study in the Journal of Foods compared the nutrition of wild salmon to farm salmon, and here's what they found. Farm salmon had 16% less protein. Farm salmon had 3 times more total fat, 65% lower omega-3 content, and in fact, the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, which is critical for inflammation, of farm salmon was 14 times worse than wild-caught salmon. You want wild-caught salmon, otherwise it is not a health food. So here's an example. I just was at my local store, and the salmon here on the left is wild-caught. You can tell because you can see it's a deeper orange-pink color. This is a farm-raised salmon, and actually I bought this at my natural store, food store local to me, and it said sustained responsibly. There are a lot of key words out there like, sustainable. That sounds really great, but it was farm factory farmed salmon, but it was a sustainable, and then next to it was the wild caught salmon. And so you can see the color difference. The deeper the color, the more omega-3s, the more protein, the more nutrients that are in there. So one way to actually pick your salmon when you go to your grocery store is based off the color. Get the deepest color possible. And I can tell you that when I go out to eat, I love eating salmon out, but I always ask, is it farm raised or is it wild caught? Because there's a big nutrient difference between the two. Just like we've talked about grass-fed meats, big difference in omega-3 content compared to conventional meats. So those are the three. I've drew a line in the sand. I am not eating those. Most of the time I trip myself up eating these when I eat out, which is a whole nother conversation. But I really wanted to bring to you the importance of making what I call a lateral change. A lot of times the best nutritional strategies for you don't mean pulling the bad stuff out, but actually looking at what you're eating and going, okay, how can I eat a better quality version of this? And if you want more videos on lateral changes, put in the comments, because that could be a really interesting concept where I can show you oil lateral changes. I can show you sugar lateral changes. Like I used to do this for my patients all the time, and I'd love to do it for you if there's interest. So put in the comments and I'll make sure I do videos on that. But for the sake of this video, I really want you to pay close attention to your eggs. Let's give up the toxic soy and let's go for wild caught salmon and really wild caught fish in general. So there you go. Those are the foods I'm not doing anymore. And who's joining me? Let me know if you're joining me. Hope that helps. If you like this video, you're going to want to check out the next one.